Are you looking to get ready, be prepared, and transform your financial future? Then you've come to the right place. This is the Get Ready Money Podcast with Tony Stewart, where Tony has insightful conversations with financial experts who are changing the way we think about money. Catch up on the latest financial trends and hear practical advice from Tony and his expert guests so you can build healthy habits that work. Be empowered with tips for implementing small changes that can have a big impact on your financial future. So sit back and get ready to hear from today's guest.
Welcome to the Get Ready Money Podcast, changing the way we think about money. I'm pleased to be joined today by Janine Firpo. Janine is a co-founder of Invest for Better and the author of Activate Your Money. In this episode, we'll be discussing how we can change the way we think about money and taking a leap of faith. Janine, welcome to the Get Ready Money Podcast. Thanks for joining us today.
Hi, it's so great to be here. Thanks for having me, Tony.
Yeah, it's great to have you. And, so let's get started. Tell us a little bit about yourself. What is your origin story?
Well, my origin story in this work is somewhat interesting. I had a varied career. First in high tech and then in international development. But because of that, I was doing work that really, really mattered to me. And about 15 years ago, I realized that my money was not helping solve the problems that I was out in the world trying to help. And I decided that I needed to figure out a way to invest all of my assets in alignment with the things that I believed in and in a way that was supporting the world that I wanted to see. So I had this huge sort of aha moment at a conference I went to, a huge awareness that the way we invest our money and the impact that our money is having really, really matters. And I made a personal commitment to do that with all of my money, starting with my cash. And I did that. I was on that journey for about 10 years, I guess, primarily with financial advisors, but none of them really got me where I wanted to be. So when I retired from my formal career about 6 years ago, I took my assets back. I started looking at this issue again. How could I really move my money in support of sustainability, uplifting women, my local community, etc., and realize that we are at a point where anyone can invest their money in ways that align with their values, and they can do it without giving up financial return. And it had been such an uphill battle for me to figure this out that I decided I wanted to make it easier for other people, particularly for women who have been so left out of the financial conversation for so long. And so I decided against advice. People told me not to do it, but I decided I'm going to write a book. And so I did. And when I set out to write the book, I realized that I was going to need some help because I'm not a financial advisor. And so I had about 40 women who are financial advisors or real experts in finance write early versions of the book for me. And then I rewrote everything to simplify it and have a single voice. And while I was writing the book, I met another woman named Ellen Remmer, who was putting women together in investment clubs to teach them how to invest in ways that aligned with their values. And that had always been a vision of my own. And so she and I joined forces once my manuscript was completed. And in 2021, we kicked off Invest for Better, which is a nonprofit that teaches women how to invest and how to invest in ways that align with their values.
Well, that's awesome. So, what was the inspiration where you knew it was time to start a company? Because, many people go, oh, I'd like to start a company or I'd like to do this. What really sparked that moment for you?
Well, I think I've always been sort of an entrepreneur. So this is not my first foray into small companies and startup companies. I've done that multiple times during my career. And when I retired from my last career, which is in international development, I knew that I was too young and too full of energy to just stop. And I sort of figured that something would emerge for me. And I was never in my wildest imaginations expecting this to be what emerged, but it was. It just started to I just started to have these inklings that I needed to write this book and that I really needed to put this kind of information out in the world. And then the opportunity for Invest for Better came along. I already had, interestingly enough, a nonprofit that I had kicked off in 2005 that was focused on women and money, but it was looking at microfinance, and it was looking at the role that microfinance could play in bringing women out of poverty, which is an area that I worked in for quite some time. And I had put that nonprofit on ice when I went to work for the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And we were able to resurrect that nonprofit, change its name to Invest for Better, and move forward with a slightly altered women and money vision. So that's how it came to be.
That's awesome. Yeah. And, when I've talked to other authors they also say the same thing, is it sort of a kind of, they knew it for a while and they'd been thinking about it, and it just recognizing the opportunity. And I think that's great advice for other people who are thinking of starting their own company. Writing the book is, you have to do it when you start having that feeling.
Yeah.
So and follow
It's
through on
been
the
an
vision.
amazingly fun road, I've got to say. The book, to be honest, was a lot of work. But what ended up happening with me in terms of the book was I signed a publishing contract in January of 2020. And I had a date of November 1st that I had to turn in the manuscript. So I ended up in COVID, when we were all forced inside, writing a book. That's what I did. And it actually, in a way, was really a gift for me, because it was such a focused piece of work that I think if my normal life had been happening around me, at the same time, I may not have finished it in time, but I did finish it like a day before it was due. So.
Yeah, those deadlines can be stressful sometimes, but that's awesome. So one of the things, Invest for Better is, it's aimed at empowering women. So how does Invest for Better help empower women?
Well, we're doing this through a variety of ways. First, we have a membership. So women join us, they become members for as little as $50 a year. And then we also have a variety of courses that we have. We, in fact, have about 8 courses now. But the way we teach is in a investment circle model. So we have women who step up to facilitate. They're often financial advisors who do that. And they facilitate 90-minute meetings every 2 weeks. And we have in these circles 8 to 20 women who actually come together and talk. So while we're imparting information, we're also providing a space where women can actually talk to each other about their money. And that is what is really sort of our secret sauce. And the thing that our members have told us they really love about Invest for Better is they've never had an opportunity to talk to other women about their money. So it's a really important way to learn and to hear what other women are doing and to share your own stories. And I think our members start to realize, oh, I maybe know a little bit more about this than I thought, or that woman, what she just said, that's really great advice and input for me. Our core curriculum, which runs over a 3-month period, gets women to start thinking about the stories we tell ourselves about money and how that can help or harm us. If we're going to invest our values, we help them figure out what their values are. And then we go into each of the asset classes, starting with cash, and we look at fixed income, and we look at the stock market, and we go into private investing, and we talk about, well, when you're investing in this asset class, what are some of your values aligned options and choices? What could that look like? So when women leave our core curriculum, they walk away with an investment policy statement, which is telling them, identifying for them, it's something they can use themselves if they are do-it-yourself investors, or something they can use with their financial advisors, that describes what their goals are financially, and particularly around their impact investing. And then we have advanced courses on things like how to invest with a gender lens, or how to be an angel investor, or if you want a values-aligned financial advisor, how to find one. And then every month we have a couple of speakers who come and talk about different things financially focused. We also have somebody present an investment every month that this is something you could actually invest in right now. So it allows you to go a little deeper into particular investments. And then we also have open office hours with financial advisors, so you can ask them anything. So those are just some of the things that we offer.
That's awesome. And I think, from what I understand, I think this applies to everybody, is we don't talk about money that much. It can be taboo, or we feel ashamed, or we just don't have the opportunity. So I think having that space helps to break down some of those things. So that's awesome. And for everybody watching or listening, of course, there will be links to Invest for Better, so you can check out the circles as well if you're curious about them. So Janine, one of the things, we talk about is that things are different for women. So what is different for women with money and investing?
Well, for a long time, we've been told that we're not very good at this, and we have been actively dissuaded from investing. So, and shockingly, I learned that it wasn't until the late 1980s in some parts of this country that women could actually get a loan on their own without a man signing. Late 1980s.
Oh,
In
yeah,
some of
that's
the
right.
states, right? It's crazy. So we have been actively dissuaded. We've told we're not good at math, and we kind of believe all that stuff, which none of it's true. And I'm happy to say younger women are not buying into it anymore. So younger women are really stepping up to get more financially engaged. But when we do invest, we actually outperform men by about 40 basis points to a full percent. And there was a great study done recently by Fidelity that looked at 5 million accounts over a 10-year period. And they found that women outperform men by 40 basis points consistently, 40 basis points a year. And the reason is that we are risk aware. So a lot of people say that we're risk averse, but that is not actually the case. We just want to understand what we are getting ourselves into. Men are more likely to just take the risk without full understanding. They'll shoot from the hip a little bit more. And women are more likely to establish a strategy and then stick with that strategy. So we buy and sell less. We don't trade as often, which also has positive implications on your financial return over the long term. So we just have a different approach. The other thing that I think is really important and speaks to what I do is that we care deeply about what our money is doing. So for example, when I worked in the world of microfinance, if you gave a loan to a woman to help bring her out of poverty, the first thing she did when she had a little bit more money was she got her kids better food. She fed her kids. And once that was handled, she put them in school. That was not what the men did if they got a little bit more money. And that same kind of care and concern about our children, our society, our environment, we support each other, about other women, those kinds of things translate very much into our cares in this country about how our money is invested and what it's doing in the world.
Yeah, I think there's so many things you said that are so impactful, but yeah, it is what you're talking about. As I noticed it in my consulting practices, that men are driven by very different things than women. Women are looking to make sure that their families are safe and secure, that they're looking at that long-term outlook, where the men are looking at costs and returns and all those things. And as you point out, they're not looking always at the long term and sticking to their long-term philosophy and goals. Women are tending to think, okay, well, what's our retirement going to look like? What's this going to look like for our kids? What's the impact on the family? So I think that's amazing. And I think that's good for men to hear this message too. It'll help you with your own personal finance. So if you're a man, listen to this message. So one of the other big things you talk about, and is really, I think at the core of what you do, is, values. So why is it important to invest your money in alignment with your values?
Well, I think it's a couple of things. So first, on a personal level, it just really feels good. I mean, I don't think we think about the fact that our money is sort of an extension of who we are. And a lot of, and I don't think we think about the fact of what our money is actually doing. You know, it was Milton Friedman who put us on this course 70 years ago, suggesting that the only thing that matters is shareholder value. It's not true. That is not a given fact of the universe. It is something that some guy came up with 70 years ago, and we have basically built our financial systems on it for the last 70 years. There's actually a lot more at stake. And I think we can see the implications of that kind of thinking, right? So I think that we don't think about what our money is invested in. And when we are made aware of it, it really matters to people and to women in particular. And it helps us feel more integrity in integrity with who we are. Because so much of our lives is about, as we were saying, about our kids, about the world we're leaving to them, about the world we're leaving to our grandchildren, our communities, these kinds of things. So I think it really matters on a personal level. But I think where it really makes a difference is on the collective level. So when you start to think about what money pursues, it's really important. In fact, today I read an article in the newspaper where the CEO of Coinbase was talking about something because he made a political contribution. And he said, money moves the needle. For better or for worse, that's how our system works. And it's true. Money moves the needle. So where we collectively put our money really matters. It determines so many things. And McKinsey and Company did some research, and that they found, because of this enormous wealth transfer that is going on right now, the biggest wealth transfer this country has ever seen, women by 2030, which is not that far away, are going to control a majority of money in this country. So how we collectively choose to invest can literally change the economy. Change the economy. So for me, that's really a big part of why this matters.
Yeah, and I think, for those who are familiar with Milton Friedman, is, as you point out, he was a well-known economist from the 70s and 80s for the most part. But a lot of his theories, I think, have been disproved recently. Or, like you talk about, is companies, for decades have been just managing for profits and shareholder returns, and now are starting to think a little bit beyond that about maybe their customers and their employees and the world.
It's, that thinking and some of the other things that have gone on, politically, have led us to one of the biggest wealth disparities that we've seen in this country in a very long time. The rich have gotten much, much richer, and our levels of poverty have increased dramatically. I mean, when I made the choice in the mid-90s to start working in sub-Saharan Africa, I did it because I saw levels of poverty there that I'd never seen before. That is no longer the case. The kind of poverty we see in this country has gotten really bad, and things are improving in some of the African nations that I worked in. So, yeah, I think that our financial system is ripe for some change, and I like to think that women can help lead the way toward that change.
Yeah, I think I think women can as well. But like you talk about with the disparity of wealth, is one of the measures is the average compensation for CEOs and the multiple of the lowest paid employee. It's so out of whack. While I'm not a fan of a lot of things of Henry Ford, is one thing he said that I thought was brilliant, is that we wanted his lowest paid employees to be able to purchase a Ford car and to have a comfortable house. And I think that's brilliant, is, if your employees can't afford to buy your products, what are you doing?
Yeah, it's a really great point. It's a really great point.
Yeah, it's always something I come back to. So, as you talk about collectively, but, I know that you also firmly believe in individuals. So how can we as individuals change the world for the better?
So there are many ways that we can do that. Obviously, I have always believed in the power of one to change the world. And I love that Margaret Mead quote that says, never underestimate I'm going to get the quote wrong, but it's basically never underestimate the power of a few individuals to change the world. They're the only ones that ever do, right? So it's generally small groups of people. So there are many, many ways that we can change the world. But when it comes to our money, you can think of something as simple as where you keep your savings account. So if you keep your savings account in a major bank, you have no idea what they're doing with your money. They're using your money somehow, but what are they doing with it? You don't know. And if you actually start uncovering what they're doing, chances are they're supporting things that you may not really like, or that you actually march on the streets, or you complain to your spouse about, or that give you anxiety. So you could simply take your savings and you could move it to a local community bank, to a financial institution that's serving underserved people, or that's providing loans to women who have really hard times getting loans, or that are supporting nonprofit organizations. So there are many, many financial institutions that are doing great things in the world. I just bought a CD, for example, at like 5.3% at a bank that is investing in providing loans to people who want to buy electric vehicles or solar lighting. So what they do is really try to advance alternative forms of energy. That's one of my banks. You can make those kinds of choices. You can choose to invest in small farmers. There are many things you can do. And these alternative banks, for example, are all FDIC insured, or they're insured by the government under another program called NCUA. So they're insured. Your money is insured.
Yeah, National Credit Union.
Just as safe as it would be in a big bank. So that's just a tiny thing you could do. But there are many, many other things you can do across your portfolio that helps you invest your money in more meaningful ways.
Well, that's awesome. And I think that's great advice for people. And, I know that, also for people of color, that this is a big thing is, so look for entities that support people of color, that lend to, let's say, Black businesses, that there are those entities out there and they can help you in multiple ways, as well as furthering where your heart is. So Janine, let's jump into the get ready questions. The first one is, what is one simple thing you can do each year to set yourself up for financial success?
Look at what you're invested in. It's absolutely essential that at least once a year, you look at all of the things that you hold in your portfolio and you track how those things have performed from the last year. If you've gone through a process of thinking about how you allocate your assets, like how much do you have in cash? How much do you have in fixed income? How much do you have in stock? How much do you have in private? How much do you have in real estate? How much do you have in crypto? Whatever the thing is that you're invested in, if you've made some decisions around how that money is allocated percentage-wise, then look at where things have led you at the end of the year, because most likely some things will have done well, other things may not have done as well, and your percentages may not be in sync with your original goals anymore. So it's good to look at that and make adjustments if you need to make adjustments. But it's also important to just keep abreast of, is your money really growing and achieving the goals and objectives that you had set out originally? So look at least once every year. I look every quarter, but I think once a year is essential.
And definitely not daily, though.
Oh, gosh. That's how you get into the problem of wanting to trade or going crazy. Yeah.
So is that one of the reasons why you encourage people to develop an investment plan so they have something to measure up to?
I think it's really important. I think that if you have a strategy and a plan, and this is what women tend to do a little bit better than men, is you don't get concerned or as concerned if the market dips. You don't start to react immediately just because the market is reacting. If you have a plan and you trust it, and your plan is a longer term plan, then you can ride those waves of the market better than if you don't have that plan.
I love it. I encourage people, in my new book, the Get Ready Blueprint, that's one of the things I encourage people to do is, if they haven't created an investment plan, to create their own personal investment plan. So I love it. But that's the other thing, as you point out, it is that measuring stick. If you want to align with your values and you have that in your investment plan, is people can go back and say, oh yeah, this investment is no longer in line with my values.
Right.
And I think that's important because companies do change what they do and banks do change where they loan their money or whatever. So, but if you're not measuring it, so.
The other thing is, I think investment planning can feel really scary and hard to some people. So I think that is an area where it pays to pay someone to help you. So even if you don't want a long-term financial advisor who's going to take a percentage of whatever money they're managing for you every year, having somebody help you think about the planning aspect, I think can be really, really valuable, particularly if you don't really know what you're doing or you're not 100% comfortable with that aspect of it. Because sometimes, particularly earlier in people's financial lives, the plan is really critically important. And one of the women who helped me write my book reminded me at one point, she wrote a chapter on like my Finance 101 chapter, and she reminded me that the decisions we make about how we allocate our assets are actually more important to our financial health than the specific investments we make. Because if, for example, something women have tended to do, because it's what we're taught, if we save, but we keep all of that savings in cash, over the long term, that money is not going to grow and we're not going to end up with what we want, right? If, on the other hand, we put everything we own into the stock market and then we need our capital back and the market happens to be low, we're not in a good situation either. So really thinking through that balancing based on your age and your goals and so on, I think it's just really essential. And then those things change too, right? It's not like you're going to have exactly the same plan year after year after year as things in your life change. So staying on top of that, I think, is really important.
Yeah, no, that's awesome advice. So Janine, what is one habit that people can change when it comes to their money?
One habit, I think, is inertia. So I think it is way too frequent for us to just keep putting things off, to think that it doesn't matter. We can do that another day. The data shows that the younger you are and the sooner you start investing, the better off you're going to be in the long run. Even if all you're saving is small buckets of money, it doesn't matter. Just getting in that habit of investing, saving and investing on a regular basis is so important. I just met somebody the other day. She's 60 and she's just starting to think about her retirement. And she was giving me a little bit of information about kind of where she is financially. And I just thought, oh my God, I don't know if she's going to have what she needs. That is not when you want to start it. It is not when your husband suddenly passes away or you get divorced. It is not that far down the line. It's like, I started investing when I was in my 20s. I am so grateful that I did. So grateful.
Yeah. And, that's great advice is, start as soon as you can. But, you have to start. Today's the best day to start.
Absolutely. If you haven't started yet, then today is the best day to start. Get over the inertia.
Yeah.
It's worth it. Please don't be some of the people that I've heard of.
Oh no. So let's get out the time machine for a minute. What advice would you give your younger self if you could go back in time knowing what you know now about money?
So it's a really interesting question. I mean, so much has changed in my own time. When I started investing back in the 80s, the way you invested was you picked individual companies in the stock market. That's what I did. And then I realized, oh, that's a lot of work. So when index funds started to come along, I was like, that is way easier. So I did that. And, I went along that way for a really long time. I think what I didn't know as my personal wealth started to grow, I mean, there are books out there, I've read them, that basically say all you have to do is pick one Vanguard broad market stock fund, invest in that, and you're done. If you want some diversification, go get an international fund and get a low cost bond fund, and then you're done. Never have to worry about your money again. That is such bad advice, in my view, particularly if your wealth is growing. One of the things that you want is to diversify. And I didn't even know that some of these options were available to me until I was probably in my 50s. And one of the things that I've gotten involved in my later years is private investing, which has been a successful vehicle for me. So I think if I gave myself advice back then, I would say be open to things that you haven't really thought about before. Experiment with them a little bit to see if they work for you or not. And always do your due diligence, because when I first started investing in private deals, the first one that I did, I invested based on emotion. I thought, oh, this is so cool. And 3 months later, the company was basically out of business.
Oh, yeah. I think we've all been there, letting our emotions get the better of us, or, all these different things. So to wrap up, what is your number one tip on changing the way we think about money?
So for me, the number one tip is to really transform your thinking that it is just this inert thing that you put into whatever to get a return. I would like you to realize that you can invest your money to grow your wealth, and you can invest it in ways that create the world that you want to see. You have that power. And you can do that without giving up financial return. And it feels so much better when you do. It's like a baking analogy for me. I know this is a little weird, but it's like investing is like the cake. You got to do that. But the icing is when you put your heart into it, when you put your values into it, and when you really start to create change with your money. And who wants to eat a cake with no icing?
For me, icing is the best part. Now I'm thinking about cake. No, but that's wonderful advice, is, that you can do these things. It takes a little time, it takes a little effort, but that's true for anything. There's nothing that comes with no effort.
Right. And actually, the values piece is not a lot more effort than the cake piece. I mean, than the traditional finance piece. The hard part of this whole thing is figuring out the investing pieces. It's the asset allocation. It's how investing works. It's how the stock market works. It's all of that. When it comes to actually picking the things that you want to invest in any asset class, you're going to have to go through that exercise anyway. There are tools that are available, freely available on the web. There are ways that you can make those choices with your values just as easily as you could make those choices without your values. So why wouldn't you integrate your values into those choices if it's not that much more work?
That's awesome. That's awesome advice. That's the mic drop. So, Janine, where can people learn more about you and invest for better?
So you can find me on the web. I'm on LinkedIn and on Instagram. You can also find my book, Activate Your Money, Invest to Grow Your Wealth and Build a Better World, anywhere where books are sold. And Invest for Better is investforbetter.org. So you can find me there too. And my personal email is just first initial of my name, J, my last name, FIRPO @investforbetter.org.
Awesome. And I would encourage everybody, to check out the work that Janine's doing, and Invest for Better. It's phenomenal stuff, especially, as if you're an intermediate investor, you've got the basics and you really want to get into it, instead of just when your 401k enrollment comes around, taking the default investment options. This is your chance and your opportunity to figure out a different way to enhance that. For everybody watching and listening, as always, I will have links to Janine's books, to Invest for Better, so that you can get in touch with her and what she's doing. So Janine, thanks for joining us today on the Get Ready Money podcast.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, this was great. Thanks for sharing your insights. And thank you, everyone, as always, for tuning in to this episode of the Get Ready Money podcast. If you learned something today, please subscribe and share with a friend. Let's change the way we think about money. Until next time.